Unqualified Opinions. I'm here with Kain Warwick, the founder of Synthetix. We're doing a rough cut here in the hallway at ETH Berlin/DAPCon. It's been an action-packed week here between Web3 summits and a couple of other conferences. So excited to have Kain join us for better or for worse. And just generally talk a little bit more about the scene here in Berlin. First, want to thank our sponsor for this podcast, Voyager. More on them in the mid-roll, but I guess for starters, Kain, why don't we take a step back, just walk through your kind of introduction to crypto, how you got into the industry, and generally why you focused on synthetic assets and kind of bridging the old and the new with crypto.
Yeah, so thanks for having me, first of all.
We're sitting on beanbag chairs.
We're sitting on beanbags in a hallway. I was in online retail for a long time, both online and offline retail. And the first kind of, main interaction I had with crypto was Asher Tan from CoinJar. He's one of the early crypto guys in Australia. I got in touch with him about essentially allowing people to use Bitcoin to buy things online, because fraud rates and chargebacks and all of those kinds of issues were something that we were trying to solve. This was back when the payment narrative was still a thing for Bitcoin. So that was my initial introduction. We ended up launching that, but there wasn't a huge amount of demand. And then in 2014, I started another startup, which was a payment startup that allowed people to deposit cash over the counter into mobile apps and a bunch of different services. And so when we launched that, it just made a lot of sense to integrate crypto exchanges. And so we now...
It wasn't crypto specific though.
It wasn't crypto specific, but one of the main use cases I had in mind was crypto deposits. So we supported like wagering, bill payments, and a bunch of other things. But getting money into crypto, because of the chargeback, the immutability on the crypto side, is quite hard. And so this was good because people would come in and they'd hand over physical cash, they'd get BTC, and there was no risk of fraud or chargebacks or things like that. So we launched in 2014 and scaled it up. We now support about 10 different crypto exchanges, including Binance, where Binance is fiat gateway in Australia. So that was my intro to crypto, and then in 2016, late 2016, as crypto market started to grow and we got into that major kind of expansion, we had a similar issue in Australia as we saw in Korea and some of the other markets where the spreads really got quite crazy. We never got as crazy as Korea, but oftentimes it was 10-12% to buy Bitcoin above the spot rate. And so I had this idea that if you had a decentralized stablecoin, you'd be able to use that to essentially arb and bring those spreads down. And that was a good idea at the time, but unfortunately regulated stablecoins kind of came in 2018 and blew that use case out of the water. And so towards the end of 2018, we decided to pivot towards synthetic assets, and that's how we got here.
And define synthetic assets for us.
Yeah.
Stablecoins probably the first killer synthetic asset that folks have tried to create.
Yeah.
How would you kind of map that ecosystem right now, and where are you focused?
I think the majority of the stablecoin activity is now collateralized. So fiat collateralized stablecoins, and you've got tons of TrueUSD, Paxos, Gemini, Circle, etc. The majority of the activity is there, but we are starting to see a little bit more success from things like Maker's DAI, right? So DAI is a synthetic US dollar instrument, and what we've done with Synthetix is to basically expand on that mechanism and say, you've got crypto collateral rather than custodial fiat collateral in a bank or in some kind of institution. So you've got on-chain crypto collateral that's used to issue synthetic assets. And we've got about 15, 20 different synthetic assets that we support now, including fiat currencies, commodities, so gold and silver, some cryptocurrencies, and most recently we launched an index token, which is an index of the top 5 crypto tokens for exchanges. So BNB, Leo, Huobi, etc.
So walk through how you go about putting gold on the blockchain, right?
Yeah.
And kind of the steps that you need to take just to create that contract, but then also how you can ensure that the synthetic asset mirrors the price of gold reliably.
That's the hard part. that's the challenge. So there is another gold project on Ethereum, which is Digix. So Digix has gold that's locked in a vault in Singapore, and they essentially have a custodian that manages that, right? And essentially the way that management of pricing and the parity of pricing between the gold token on Ethereum and in the real world is managed as redeemability. So you can redeem that token for gold theoretically, by turning up in Singapore and presenting it and getting your gold. We don't have that luxury. So we're a soft peg. You can't actually redeem our synthetic assets for the underlying collateral. And so the way that we manage the pricing is we have an oracle. So there's a price oracle that essentially says this is the price of this asset on chain, and the token itself mirrors that price. Now, the challenge is liquidity then, right? How do people move in and out of it? And the way that we've solved that is by using Uniswap. So we have about 4,000 ETH worth of liquidity on Uniswap, which is kind of a bridge between Ethereum and our synthetic asset ecosystem.
And 4,000 ETH covers all of the synthetic assets that you're currently offering.
It covers the on-ramp into the ecosystem.
Okay.
Right? So essentially, if you wanted to move, $10,000 or $20,000 worth of ETH into our synthetic asset ecosystem, you could do that with pretty minimal slippage. So at the moment, that's kind of the main mechanism for maintaining the peg of all of these different assets into the rest of the Ethereum ecosystem.
So the way to think about this then would probably be Tether is more similar to Digix,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And then you would be more similar to Maker,
Correct.
right? In terms of how you actually go about providing access to these the different assets.
That's right.
So, so the index and then some of these commodities are step one. We've seen other companies think about creating synthetic securities, right? So how can you invest in Tesla and Uber and Apple and whatnot? It's surprising me that none of that has really taken off. Why is that? Is it just setting up the oracles and getting that reliable data feed that's the challenge, or
I think
what kind of drives
there's a couple of challenges. So one of the challenges is in order for people to trust. You could do the Tether approach, right? You could go and buy these equities and put them in a trust somewhere and then issue a token against it. But if you did that, regulators would be very unhappy, right? So that kind of pathway, the Tether pathway, if you will, is not really open, right? At least right now, no one's been able to really solve that because then management of those assets and who's holding them in KYC and AML becomes really hard on Ethereum. So the alternative solution is to launch it in the way that we've launched our assets, right? Where it's crypto collateralized, it's all on chain, there's no sort of custody required. And the challenge there, the reason why I think it hasn't taken off, is it's really hard to get that liquidity bootstrap. So DAI was able to do it because they had early momentum with ETH holders, and a lot of people put a lot of ETH in to kind of provide that liquidity. But it's not necessarily an easy thing. We've only just in the last month or so been able to kind of get enough traction that people really believe that this debt, that the synthetic ETH is worth one ETH. That maintaining that parity has been quite hard.
So this kind of works in different steps, right? At time zero, you're going to have major problems with liquidity. So you want to go asset by asset and kind of figure out where the market's going to be with you. So you mentioned about $500,000 worth of ETH in Uniswap.
Yeah, correct.
And 4,000.
Yeah, it's about 4,000. So call it 800K.
Okay.
About 800K.
So that's not a lot, right? And especially if you're spreading that across multiple assets. So what's the most liquid asset right now?
So this is kind of the interesting thing, right? The way that the mechanism works is it's a pool of collateral. So all of the assets are backed by the same collateral pool, right? And that collateral pool is connected to the rest of the Ethereum ecosystem via this Uniswap pool. So if you have ETH right now and you want to get into a synthetic asset, you go via Uniswap and you trade that ETH into synthetic ETH. Once you've got synthetic ETH, you can convert that into any of the other assets. So you can get synthetic Bitcoin, you can get this synthetic index token, synthetic gold, and there's actually no limitation from a liquidity perspective. Once you've got that debt, you have the right to go to the contracts and reprice it. And that's really kind of the power of the system, is that anyone who's holding debt has the right to reprice against the contracts to the value that they're holding.
And that's happening on Synthetix platform or Uniswap? So Uniswap is just the on-ramp to get to these assets. Got it. What is the typical slippage for the most liquid asset that's currently available using Synthetix? And then bootstrapping liquidity is, by definition, it means you're going to have spreads and it's going to be inefficient. But for highly volatile assets where people are just looking for exposure that might otherwise be difficult to get, don't really care, right? It's the same thing like paying an OTC broker or paying local Bitcoins. At times you're going to be willing to spend 3, 4, 5, even 10%, right? As we saw, in Australia and in Korea. Walk me through how those spreads come down over time. What amount of liquidity is necessary? What type of spikes or inefficiencies you see on an ongoing basis, and what, if anything, can be exploited from a market maker that's going rogue or whatnot. This is separate from the Oracle conversation. We'll get to that. But
okay. So I think probably the best analogy to use is, imagine that Synthetix exchange is similar to like a centralized exchange, right? You need the deposit and withdrawal mechanism to get in there. Once you're in there, there's infinite liquidity. So once you've deposited money, any asset you can freely move between any of the different assets because you're just repricing it, right? So the big challenge for us is the on-ramps and off-ramps. So how do we let you, let's say you have $10,000 and you want to deposit it, and more importantly, withdraw it later, right? Because that, you can go in one direction, but getting out is the hard part. How do we ensure that you have low slippage there? And at the moment, for $10,000, it's about 1%, give or take. For $50,000, it starts to go up. It's like 5%, potentially 5. So I think that's the thing that we're trying to solve over time, is ensuring that we've got really efficient on-ramps into and out of the exchange. Once you're on the exchange, you've got no limitations. You can trade. So, for example, we've seen block trades of up to $750,000 on the exchange. So someone can trade $750,000 worth of synthetic Bitcoin into synthetic US dollars. The network just lets you reprice that down. But then to move $750,000 out into Ethereum would be 30% slippage. There's just not enough movement in it.
And you think that's going to be consistent with any asset that's listed?
It is, yeah. Okay. It's kind of the benefit of the mechanism, is that once in there, you've got infinite liquidity. It's just making sure we bootstrap the liquidity into and out of the ecosystem.
So how do you think about the assets that you're going to target next? Because obviously a crypto native protocol is going to have you're going to be able to, I think, generate much more interest in crypto assets or commodities that are kind of familiar to folks. To me, one killer application of crypto, and particularly what you're building, could be giving people in India, say, exposure to U.S. stocks. So you've got an education problem, you've got kind of the technical lift, but when does that become feasible, right? So what are the structural impediments to actually getting that done in the kind of near to medium term?
Yeah, I think it kind of speaks to your earlier question about why have we not seen this yet? I think the consumers of traditional assets, people who don't have access to a brokerage account, etc., are also not connected to the Ethereum ecosystem, right? So I think that connectivity needs to emerge, and as someone who's been operating like fiat on-ramp in Australia, which is obviously not an emerging economy, we've got fairly sophisticated payment infrastructure, but it's still high friction. The ability to kind of build out that infrastructure, I think it's just starting to come online. So we're seeing things like Wire, where now you can use a credit card to make a small purchase, right? So I think in the next 12 to 18 months, the ability to kind of bring these things together and connect people into this ecosystem is going to emerge, and then at that point, providing that those U.S. stocks and equities and indices and things like that, there'll be demand. But at the moment, you and I, why are we doing that, right? It doesn't make that much sense because we've got brokerage accounts and we can access. So you need the demand side, you also need the connectivity, and you've got to connect that pipe together.
And you need good data, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to get to that in one second and talk about some of the things that you guys have learned from Oracle maintenance. First though, quick shout out to our sponsor Voyager. The time it takes for me to finish this ad roll, Voyager could search dozens of crypto exchanges to find the very best price for your crypto trades. Your licensed crypto broker, crazy fast iOS app, I've tried it out, that gives you access to more than 20 coins today and is 100% commission free, no bullshit. They make money while you save money on tighter cross-exchange trading spreads. So head over to investvoyager.com/Messari, that's investvoyager.com, and earn $25 of free Bitcoin when you download the Voyager iOS app and register. And help us out because they're a good supporter of Unqualified Opinions. So, all right, let's get back to it. So let's talk about the $1 billion. So quick backdrop. There was an Oracle bug that led to a 1000x price discrepancy amidst some of your
on the
assets.
Korean won specifically.
Based on the Korean won, that a trading bot was able to exploit.
That's right.
And at least on paper make $1 billion.
It was actually
$11 billion. Okay, well, I was giving
at a certain point. I appreciate you tamping it down by an order of magnitude, but it was actually 11.
All right. So on a personal basis, were you awake when that happened, or did that wake you up?
Yeah, I wasn't, unfortunately. So we have an office in New York. We've got people kind of spread around everywhere. So I'll typically get up at about like 3:30 in the morning, and I'll kind of check to make sure that nothing crazy is going on, and then I usually go back to bed after an hour. This was the one time in maybe like 6 months that I didn't do that. So I went to bed at like midnight, and I woke up at about 6:30, and Jordan, who's based in New York, called me and he said, we've got a problem. And it's kind of interesting when you have such a complex system, immediately you start cycling through where could this problem be? Is the problem? So we essentially realized that the Oracle had failed. There was an outage in the Oracle, we had to negotiate with the bot owner to try and roll back the transactions essentially. So we're able to do it. There was no loss of funds, and I think it does sort of speak to the way that the mechanism works. So we've got around about $40 million worth of collateral. And so the situation we were in is there was $40 million worth of collateral backing $11 billion worth of debt, right? So the whole system was under collateralized. And so there would be no way for that person to kind of take those gains, if you will. And so what we did is
it broke the system.
It broke the system, absolutely. The system was frozen at that point, right? And so, we said to the bot owner, okay, we found a bug, you exploited it, we'll give you a bug bounty. It was a fairly tense negotiation because they wanted a lot of money, and we were like, we can't just give you, whatever you want, So we eventually were able to work out something that I think, was reasonable on both sides and won it back. But I think it very much speaks to the risks of, these highly complex systems, and particularly when you've got an Oracle, which controls all the prices in the system, that is centralized. And something that we knew on an abstract level was a high risk part of the system, probably one of the highest risk parts of the system, but it became practically an issue as well. So we're looking at a bunch of different Oracle solutions, including Chainlink, to remove some of the centralization. And I think the most important thing about that is all of our concepts are open source. This is the only closed source piece of software in the platform, and it was the one that failed. And I think there's a lesson in that, that you don't want things that are not, that don't have a lot of eyeballs on them. So that's probably the biggest takeaway for me in the whole experience is having something that is centralized and closed source in an open source ecosystem is just a huge potential point of failure.
Is this a crypto specific problem, right? So the data providers that are provisioning these APIs and
these
they're
were
just
commercial
underfunded.
currency APIs. This
Okay.
wasn't crypto. This was like a commercial forex API. Right?
Interesting.
And we put a lot of effort into making the crypto APIs super robust, right? We unfortunately made an assumption that these commercial APIs would be fairly robust, and it turned out to be wrong. And we had a simultaneous failure of two of them, and one of them had been offline, and so this cascading failure essentially opened. But we never thought it would be forex that would catch us. We thought it would be crypto.
So it's interesting because there's a lot that people kind of hype up about unstoppable contracts and just autopilot DAOs and dApps and things like that. I think you see an example like what happened with Synthetix and kind of the failure of the Oracle, and you kind of think maybe you have to have circuit breakers by default, right? Just like the public markets do. If something it looks anomalous because it's orders of magnitude different, in a split second than what you'd expect, you probably want to build in mechanisms to shut things down, right? I'm not sure if anyone's working on that. It seems like everybody's just kind of go. Let's make sure that that these things can run on autopilot the way that we've spoken about them. But I think in this market, is it such a bad thing to have downtime? Particularly if you catch an anomaly like that. And maybe the question then is, what additional steps have you guys taken just to do your own kind of in-house anomaly detection? But then maybe more importantly, is that a market need, right? That's still not getting met, by Chainlink or any of the other Oracle services today.
Yeah. So I think there's a whole bunch of questions in there, and some of it is kind of at an ideological level, right? So for me personally, I'm a crypto anarchist. I believe that we should have these unstoppable contracts, but I'm also a pragmatic founder of a startup that's trying to get to product market fit, right? And those things are intentional, because we want something that we can deploy that is censorship resistant and can just continue to run, but it's reliant on outside data, which means that there's trusted aspects to it. It's also reliant on our ability to upgrade it. And so we've been very, as transparent as we can be, we've been very upfront, certainly within our community, that we have a lot of control over the contracts. And we can essentially, through our proxy architecture, redeploy things and shut them down, etc. But the intent is over time to cut those bridges. But to your, question specifically about getting these data feeds in, we now have some mechanisms where if something happens and there is a huge shift, the system will automatically shut itself down. And then there's a requirement for someone, and in this case it's currently the team, to step in and identify the issue. In the future, what I'd like to see is if that anomaly, if that trigger gets flipped and the system is shut down, that it's actually the community that then decides to re-enable the contracts, right? So I think that we can move over time away from this centralized control, and it also sort of speaks to your question around equities and things like that, because if you have a centralized service that's offering, access to Tesla for people in India, there's regulatory concerns about that potential, right? So if you genuinely want to have an open and permissionless system where any asset can be listed, it needs to be genuinely open and permissionless, and right now it's not. And so that's something that we're really working on to kind of cut some of those bridges and get the system as permissionless and decentralized as it can be.
Well, securities are interesting because you do have a certain trading window, right? So you have downtime every day.
You do.
And yes, you could provide like overnight liquidity and the ability for people to trade these synthetic assets overnight. But when it comes to actually pulling data and making sure that your synthetic asset is not totally mispriced, or that the market makers have the opportunity to trade around any mispricing, it seems like there's kind of a natural pause
Yes.
and breaking the action where you would be able to fix some of these issues or make upgrades or flagging an anomaly and shutting down the system might mean that you lose a trading day, right?
Yeah.
Versus figuring out, okay, when I redeploy and kind of turn the system back on,
What's going to happen?
what's going to happen? How do we roll everything back? It seems like it would be easier to do that and say, okay, we're done for the day.
Yep.
We've halted trading. Trading will reopen at 9:30, just the way you'd see for a stock that has a major announcement, right?
That's right.
So maybe that's not as true for some of the crypto assets, and the expectation is going to be that this is more Wild West, but it would seem to be less of a concern perhaps with any synthetic securities that might get listed later on.
Yeah, correct. So I think there's a question of like user experience here as well, right? If I am in India, I might not be aware of when the market's open in New York, right? And so the question is, do you freeze trading when trading's not open? Do you use some kind of futures feed or after hours trading? How do we blend those things and how do we make the user experience as good as possible? And then I think there's a secondary question, which is who is stopping it? Who's halting trading? Is it the system itself? And what level of engagement is there from humans to decide whether it's reopened, et cetera? And those are open questions that need to be answered in these platforms, basically.
So what's next on the roadmap for Synthetix? What should people be on the lookout for?
Yeah, so I mean, the index token was our most recent launch. So that's something that we're going to be, rolling out and talking about a lot more. But probably the biggest change that's coming up later in the year is full synthetic positions. So it will be much closer to like a BitMEX or Deribit like futures market than the existing sort of spot trading market that we have now. So that's going to be the biggest upgrade that we've had probably all year.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Kain, it's been fun hanging out in Berlin,
Thanks,
and best of luck with everything going forward. Thank you for everybody for tuning in and bearing with me while I get over this cold here. So if I sniffled a couple times, please disregard. I'll have the Blockers Group guys edit that out for the podcast itself. But until next time, and later on today or tomorrow when we have another couple live interviews here from Berlin. Thanks again. Peace.